My work is very much about transforming public and particularly the key policymakers' understanding of the North Pole region as not being without life. It is rammed with life and biodiversity, but it is all stressed. My journey in many ways did start becoming a reality in polar terms here at the RGS. I used to come here at lunch breaks, and I'd come across a room upstairs that was rather sort of Great Expectations, like in the sort of Miss Havisham context of cobwebs. No one had been in there. It was never used. Most people, even working here, didn't even know it existed. And I found this room with lots of books behind brass grills. I just pointed randomly at, well, let's open that grill. And so the door swung open, and he said, so which book do you want from here? And I deliberately turned away, and I just reached in, and I said, that one, and I pulled it out. And it was by this fellow, Bernhard Adolf Hansch, who was a German naturalist. It was a translation of an account of his journey and his life's work, really. He died on the journey. His two Inuit companions brought his records back, and the man and the journey was so extreme, and in about 1910, 1912, so very much of the period when Shackleton was doing his works down in Antarctica. It absolutely blew my mind that someone had done this level of work in the most extreme circumstances, and no one had heard of him. And I thought that the man deserves to have some recognition and to give value to his work. I wanted to then replicate his journey and do the fauna and flora measurements with scientists, and then we could compare what the changes were over 100 years. So that was what I took from it. And I actually walked out of the RGS. I had a pretty stellar job, traveling all around the world, meeting famous sports stars and representing them and big sports events. And I walked to the office and I resigned that day. When I went up there for the first time, I was quite focused on the adventure of it all. And part of the adventure is not knowing what's going to happen and then finding out how you do react. There's nothing to measure your progress by. There's no buildings, no telegraph poles, no airplanes flying across, no cars, no trees, nothing but snow and ice and rock and cloud. And your life is metronomic. You get up at a certain time, you have the same foods and eat it in the same way, and then off you set. And every hour or every 2 hours or whatever, you have a break and you eat the same foods. Bumpity, 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 bum. And you're thrown in on yourself because there's very little references outside. So it is a monk-like existence. And for some, that's good and healthy. And for others, it's frightening. Stage one, for everybody, in my experience, having taken a lot of people to the North Pole in different durations of distances, is that we all start with, it's little me in here, and I'm going to fight and beat. I've got to fight and beat and get to the far end. And it's me against the environment. After quite a few years of guiding, I grew weary of this, because it doesn't matter how much you explain to people, there's so much more to this. You're going to be fine. We will reach the pole. It's about the journey. It's not about the reaching of the pole, actually. And you're far more likely, if your behaviours are appropriate, you're far more likely to reach the pole. As I've morphed through these stages, I've realised that you're thinking far too highly of yourself if you think the environment can be bothered with you. I then start to relax into it and really start to experience it in a sort of more meaningful way. And that actually the snow, for example, is your friend. I mean, it's a great insulator. It's also your source of water, and it also can be a source of shelter. So my relationship changed from adventure to sort of slightly more understanding it and trying to share that with people. And then I did my own projects, and that really took me to another level of understanding about changing situation up there. There was a moment in time when I got it. I realized there was a huge situation unfolding that most people will never see or experience, which was the breaking up and the receding and the thinning of the sea ice cover on the Arctic Ocean that's sort of around the North Pole. It was always highly unnerving to put on this suit and commit yourself to going into this inky black water, because there's no light that gets in because there's so much ice around it. It's like going into black ink. I had to screw my courage to the plate and say, right, this is what you're going to have to do if you want to reach the pole. That's what got me thinking, if I have to go through that to realise it, there's no hope that the wider world are really going to understand what's going on. There's a very small community of about 10 of us in the world who've got the skills to travel across sea ice. And the number of exciting projects, pioneering things to do, are now, vanishingly small. But we can access these areas that scientists cannot, because then, they don't have the skills, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the cash, maybe they can't raise the money, and maybe some explorers can raise the money. It's too uncomfortable, it's too dangerous, etc., etc. We can go to places in the best traditions of exploration and find things out, by which I mean gather data, collect samples. And I thought, what a fantastic thing to be able to finally give sort of practical use to these very esoteric collection of skills that there's very few of us have. So that was an inspiring moment for me and gave me a new purpose. Set up the Arctic Survey, which the Catlin group funded, and that ran actually from 2008 to 2012. It occurred to me that there was an opportunity to create a research program. I wasn't going to wait for scientists to sort of call me. We get on the front foot, set up this service for scientists where there would be a research facility like an Antarctic research base, but we'd have an Arctic research base. It would be on sea ice. We had up to 30 scientists each year, and a staff of 50 people running it, both in the UK from London and out in the field. The thickness of the sea ice, which was not well observed by satellites. Satellites are great at seeing where the ice is, but they were really struggling to work out how thick it was from the measurement devices that they had. So we were literally hand drilling through the ice, and then we were also doing ocean acidification studies. The oceans absorb enormous amounts of carbon dioxide. And it turns out that, rather sort of counterintuitively, the colder the water is, the more readily it dissolves carbon dioxide. And it becomes more acidic, it becomes carbonic acid. And of course, shell life is not very happy in an increasingly acidic dissolving liquid. So there's a huge issues about what happens to biodiversity just because of what's called ocean acidification. So it's like as they would say, the canary in the coal mine. So I've been on this journey, and it starts with enjoying yourself, and then it becomes a bit more professional, in my case, and then you really start to get it. You really start to understand it, actually more than anyone else does. I mean, you've been out there for so long. No one else has your sort of pool of knowledge, and then you start to get a bit protective about it. And when you start to see the threats to this, the biodiversity in this region, I certainly felt I had a social responsibility. I mean, that is those are the two words that's just me. I'm not interested in making money. And this final phase of the journey for me in the Arctic is, how can I protect it? And I'm in a unique position. I have sort of a degree of reputation, a degree of authority and authenticity and knowledge. I don't have knowledge in a scientific sense, but I have a type of knowledge that's interesting and can just add to the mosaic of knowledge. Last year I set up the 90 North Foundation, and it was born out of a realization that, from the Catlin Arctic Survey work actually, that the science is essential to providing understanding. But it goes on and gets ever more detailed and siloed, and there is no end to the knowledge that can be found, if you will. The danger is that by the time we've understood how everything works, for example, in the Arctic Ocean, the sea ice is gone. We must start to put in place the sort of systems and processes that will bring about protection. So the objective of the 90 North Foundation is to create a fully protected, marine protected area, which we could call the Central Arctic Ocean Marine Reserve. At the deepest level, really what I find my work to be about is about biodiversity and the protection of it. Now, biodiversity is a slightly technical term, and people probably can guess that it's something to do with different animals and not letting things go extinct, especially big things that are, like tigers and polar bears. But in a way, that's really not it. Biodiversity, what it is, it's the number of species, types of species, if you like, multiplied by the number of individuals, the populations of those species, multiplied by the health of those species. That is your biodiversity. Out of complex systems, of which the global biodiversity system is incredibly complex, out of all this biodiversity, systems emerge, and we can call them ecosystems, just like in economics. Okay? Now, what biodiversity actually is, we're not actually trying to protect the animals because they're nice, and it's nice to have lots of different animals. It's because between them, and animals and plants most particularly, they create all the life-supporting services that we need. And that's kind of all you need to know. We cannot exist as humans, and all sorts of animals and plants cannot exist unless there's this big complex system. So if you imagine this children's sort of Jenga tower, with the wooden blocks, no scientist will ever tell you which block, when you pull it out, is the one that's going to collapse, let's call it the Arctic Ocean ecosystem. And they're not going to tell you, if you reduce a population of a species by a certain amount, that's the block that will touch out. But the tower is wobbly. Lots of systems are wobbly in biodiversity systems. So our work is to try and shore it up and stop, in terms of the 90 North Foundation's work, stopping commercial fishing going in there for the first time, because it can, now that the sea ice is gone, stopping international shipping, treating it as a shortcut route, because it can, now that the sea ice is gone, and stopping mineral explorers and extractors going in, because they can. It's like, you've never been up there before. Throughout human history, it's not been possible. It's the most virgin waters you're ever going to get. Let's just keep it that way. You don't need to go there, so don't go there just because you can. If people would like to get engaged with our work and support us, a starting point would be to just check out the 90 North's Instagram account and Twitter and so on. Or indeed go to our website, which is lots of W's.90northfoundation.org.